We cannot solve our problems by making the same failed assumptions and repeating the same failed strategies of the past. Old challenges demand new approaches. My announcement today marks the beginning of a new approach to conflict between Israel and the Palestinians. In 1995, Congress adopted the Jerusalem Embassy Act, urging the federal government to relocate the American embassy to Jerusalem and to recognize that that city, and so importantly, is Israel's capital. This act passed Congress by an overwhelming bipartisan majority and was reaffirmed by a unanimous vote of the Senate only 6 months ago. Yet for over 20 years, every previous American president has exercised the law's waiver, refusing to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem or to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital city. Presidents issued these waivers under the belief that delaying the recognition of Jerusalem would advance the cause of peace. Some say they lacked courage, but they made their best judgment based on facts as they understood them at the time. Nevertheless, the record is in. After more than 2 decades of waivers, we are no closer to a lasting peace agreement between Israel and the Palestinians. It would be folly to assume that repeating the exact same formula would now produce a different or better result. Therefore, I have determined that it is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
There it is.
While previous presidents have made this a major campaign promise, they failed to deliver. Today, I am delivering. I've judged this course of action to be in the best interests of the United States of America and the pursuit of peace between Israel and the Palestinians. This is a long overdue step to advance the peace process and to work towards a lasting agreement. Israel is a sovereign nation with the right, like every other sovereign nation, to determine its own capital. Acknowledging this is a fact is a necessary condition for achieving peace. It was 70 years ago that the United States, under President Truman, recognized the State of Israel. Ever since then, Israel has made its capital in the city of Jerusalem, the capital the Jewish people established in ancient times. Today, Jerusalem is the seat of the modern Israeli government. It is the home of the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, as well as the Israeli Supreme Court. It is the location of the official residence of the Prime Minister and the President. It is the headquarters of many government ministries. For decades, visiting American presidents, secretaries of state, and military leaders have met their Israeli counterparts in Jerusalem, as I did on my trip to Israel earlier this year. Jerusalem is not just the heart of 3 great religions, but it is now also the heart of one of the most successful democracies in the world. Over the past 7 decades, the Israeli people have built a country where Jews, Muslims, and Christians, and people of all faiths are free to live and worship according to their conscience and according to their beliefs. Jerusalem is today and must remain a place where Jews pray at the Western Wall, where Christians walk the Stations of the Cross, and where Muslims worship at Al-Aqsa Mosque. However, Through all of these years, presidents representing the United States have declined to officially recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. In fact, we have declined to acknowledge any Israeli capital at all. But today we finally acknowledge the obvious, that Jerusalem is Israel's capital. This is nothing more or less than a recognition of reality. It is also the right thing to do. It's something that has to be done. That is why, consistent with the Jerusalem Embassy Act, I am also directing the State Department to begin preparation to move the American Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. This will immediately begin the process of hiring architects, engineers, and planners so that a new embassy, when completed, will be a magnificent tribute to peace. In making these announcements, I also want to make one point very clear. This decision is not intended in any way to reflect a departure from our strong commitment to facilitate a lasting peace agreement. We want an agreement that is a great deal for the Israelis and a great deal for the Palestinians. We are not taking a position of any final status issues, including the specific boundaries of the Israeli sovereignty in Jerusalem or the resolution of contested borders. Those questions are up to the parties involved. The United States remains deeply committed to helping facilitate a peace agreement that is acceptable to both sides. I intend to do everything in my power to help forge such an agreement. Without question, Jerusalem is one of the most sensitive issues in those talks. The United States would support a two-state solution if agreed to by both sides. In the meantime, I call on all parties to maintain the status quo at Jerusalem's holy sites, including the Temple Mount, also known as Haram al-Sharif. Above all, our greatest hope is for peace, the universal yearning in every human soul. With today's action, I reaffirm my administration's long-standing commitment to a future of peace and security for the region. There will, of course, be disagreement and dissent regarding this announcement. But we are confident that ultimately, as we work through these disagreements, we will arrive at a peace and a place far greater in understanding and cooperation. This sacred city should call forth the best in humanity, lifting our sights to what it is possible, not pulling us back and down to the old fights that have become so totally predictable. Peace is never beyond the grasp of those willing to reach it. So today we call for calm, for moderation, and for the voices of tolerance.
Oh, come on. Sorry about this, guys. I think of the fox.
Reasoned debate, not violence. Parties to maintain the status quo at Jerusalem's holy sites, including the Temple Mount, also known as Haram al-Sharif. Above all, our greatest hope is for peace, the universal yearning in every human soul. With today's action, I reaffirm my administration's long-standing commitment to a future of peace and security for the region. There will, of course, be disagreement and dissent regarding this announcement. But we are confident that ultimately, as we work through these disagreements, we will arrive at a peace and a place far greater in understanding and cooperation. This sacred city should call forth the best in humanity, lifting our sights to what it is possible, not pulling us back and down to the old fights that have become so totally predictable. Peace is never beyond the grasp of those willing to reach it. So today we call for calm, for moderation, and for the voices of tolerance to prevail over the purveyors of hate. Our children should inherit our love, not our conflicts. I repeat the message I delivered at the historic and extraordinary summit in Saudi Arabia earlier this year. The Middle East is a region rich with culture, spirit, and history. Its people are brilliant, proud, and diverse, vibrant, and strong. But the incredible future awaiting this region is held at bay by bloodshed, ignorance, and terror. Vice President Pence will travel to the region in the coming days to reaffirm our commitment to work with partners throughout the Middle East to defeat radicalism that threatens the hopes and dreams of future generations. It is time for the many who desire peace to expel the extremists from their midst. It is time for all civilized nations and people to respond to disagreement with reasoned debate, not violence. And it is time for young and moderate voices all across the Middle East to claim for themselves a bright and beautiful future. So today, let us rededicate ourselves to a path of mutual understanding and respect. Let us rethink old assumptions and open our hearts and minds to possible and possibilities. And finally, I ask the leaders of the region, political and religious, Israeli and Palestinian, Jewish and Christian and Muslim, to join us in the noble quest for lasting peace. Thank you. God bless you. God bless Israel. God bless the Palestinians. And God bless the United States. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And with that, from the diplomatic reception room, President Trump.
Okay, so that was Donald Trump declaring Jerusalem as Israel's capital and setting a chain of events in motion that we're most likely going to hear about in the news in the days, maybe even in the hours to come. This one thing I did want to mention, his voice sounded very strange. It was like he had a cold, and I'm not saying that's impossible for a president to have, but when he was speaking an hour earlier, he sounded fine. And just there, you even heard the way he said United States of America. I don't know what was going on there, but it seemed a bit auspicious, so worth pointing out. But there we have it. We've been waiting for the announcement for the last couple of days, and it's now been announced December the 6th started at 7 minutes past 1 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern time. And now we're going to have to wait and see what comes from this announcement. Even though he said the US is committed to a two-state solution, or rather, the US is committed to peace talks continuing, and a two-state solution can be achieved if both sides agree to that. But I don't see how that's going to happen when you've just declared Jerusalem Israel's capital, and we know that that issue has been highly contentious. In other news, now you have to forgive me because I'm now struggling to keep up with all the reports that are coming out. And unfortunately, because there are so many, I haven't had the opportunity to read all of them to verify their information. But I think the headlines alone are kind of worth pointing out to you. So Netanyahu saying we have to act now against Iran. And obviously this is coming out at the same time as Donald Trump is announcing that Jerusalem is now Israel's capital. So I found that to be coincidental timing, to say the least. Israel won't allow Iran to establish a military base in Syria, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said. Excuse me, my computer is responding slow. As he called on the world to halt Iran's development of ballistic missiles, nuclear power, and its support of global terrorism. We have to act now against Iran, Netanyahu said on Wednesday afternoon at the Jerusalem Post diplomatic conference. And these comments come the same week that Israeli forces allegedly executed 2 airstrikes against Syria, including one on an Iranian military base and other on a Syrian military research center. We will not let them establish themselves in Syria, Netanyahu said. We mean what we say, and we say what we mean. Next report. Now, these aren't going to be about Israel. These are going back to North Korea, because while one thing is going on, we can't take our eyes off the other thing at the same time. Too many things going on can give you a real headache. China hints that it may back North Korea in the event of a war, which we kind of already knew, because China hasn't really been 100% on enforcing the UN sanctions that have been imposed upon North Korea. They still have oil flowing there. They've still got trade flowing in as well. And now we're hearing increasingly tense standoff between the US and North Korea may have hit a new high this week as US and South Korean military units conducted an annual air power exercise over the Korean Peninsula. As we know about, that's a Vigilant Ace exercise. China's Air Force reportedly staged exercises in routes and areas it has never flown before over the Yellow and East Seas. The exercise involved reconnaissance planes, fighter jets, and early warning and control aircraft, and a joint operation with surface-to-air missile units. That's pretty much the report. Well, most of it. Just saying that China is kind of stepping up its war efforts at the same time as the US and South Korea are conducting their Vigilant Ace exercise. And we have another report that says China and Russia say they won't do any more, or they won't do more on North Korea. So Russia and China are sending a message through their state-controlled media that they have reached their limit cooperating with the US-led pressure campaign against North Korea. President Donald Trump said new sanctions against the North Korean regime would come soon, but efforts to get Russia and China to participate look unlikely. So too does any escalation of United Nations Security Council sanctions based on the positions Russia and China are broadcasting. And if that is the case, Trump's recent signals that his administration is prepared to take decisive unilateral action on the Korean Peninsula looks all the more serious. And this is going on at the same time everything else is going on. So when tensions on the Korean Peninsula reach a new height, a large portion of the pressure is transferred to China, but the US and North Korea must shoulder their own responsibility without making China the scapegoat, it reads. I did have a video on that the other day, so we'll move on to the next subject, or topic rather, news report, which is North Korea. This is from the Daily Express. They tend to have sensationalist headlines, but I find that they're really quick off the mark with, even though their headlines are sensationalist, their reports are accurate, and they seem to be one of the first newspapers to get this information out on a consistent basis. So I like them for that reason. I hate them for their ads and headlines, but there you go. So North Korea shock warning. Trump is really running out of time amid World War III threat. North Korea's developing technology makes a strike on the US more and more likely. This is according to South Carolina's senator. North Korea's nuclear tests keep sparking fear of World War III, and Donald Trump is running out of time, says South Carolina's Senator Lindsey Graham. And we had the video of Lindsey Graham talking about that, and that's posted on my channel as well. He told CBS News the policy of the Trump administration is to deny North Korea the capability to hit America with a nuclear-tipped missile, not to contain it. Denial means to preempt the war as a last resort. That preemption is becoming more likely as their technology matures. Every missile test, every underground test of a nuclear weapon means the marriage is more likely. So that's just a report on Lindsey Graham letting us know he's also the same senator that said that US dependence should be moved out of South Korea, and that any tours over there should be without the military personnel's dependents traveling with them. So that's a pretty serious and clear warning that this tension on the Korean Peninsula has reached an all-time high. And obviously now you've got the potential for an equally dangerous situation in the Middle East over this decision to move the embassy. As I said, I don't disagree with that decision, but I disagree with the timing. My advice would be to deal with one at a time, but that doesn't seem the way that this administration handles things. So this is relating back to Israel, and he says, the title says, he's declaring war on 1.5 billion Muslims. Iran, Pope, Russia and China warn Trump over Israel. So Donald Trump risks sparking a religious war in the Middle East and angering Muslims if he recognizes Jerusalem as Israel's capital city today. Turkey and Iran have warned. And I've already talked about the importance of Turkey strategically for its military bases that it holds for the US, as well as being a key ally in NATO. So if they separate from Israel, it kind of sets in motion a tailspin for them to sever ties with other countries or other entities, if you will. So Turkish Prime Minister Binali Yildirim warned the move could spark a holy war and make the region's problems unsolvable, saying it was vital for global peace that President Trump change his mind, while President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said through a spokesman that the US was plunging the region and the world into a fire with no end in sight. They are among a host of leaders furious that Mr. Trump is expected to recognize Jerusalem rather than Tel Aviv as the Israeli capital in a speech in Washington later today. And that's obviously just happened. Even the Pope has criticized the move, issuing an unusually strong plea to respect the status quo and UN resolutions on the subject. Now, obviously, I've made my feelings clear about what I think about the move in relation to it being not just the right thing, but it seems like it was destined. It's not just something that just happened out of the blue. This has come in Israel's 70th year as well. Their 70th year just started on the 29th of November. And lo and behold, less than 2 weeks in, they're now having their capital, or rather they're now having their capital recognized as Jerusalem by the US. So I don't know if those words made sense. I might have got them the wrong way around, but you understand what I mean. This is incredible stuff that's happening right now. Prophetic stuff. One YouTuber on my channel did comment that it's we're seeing the end, not the end times, but we're seeing Bible prophecy unfolding before our eyes. And I truly believe that. I keep talking about it, but the stars, the sun, the moon, the signs we're supposed to see there. If the Revelation 12 sign was not a sign in the stars, and the Great American Eclipse was not a sign in the sun, and the supermoon we've just had on December the 3rd was not a sign in the moon, I don't know what other signs to look for. I'm pretty sure these are the signs. If there's not wars going on right now in the Middle East and rumors of war with North Korea and again in the Middle East, then I don't know when that part of the Bible prophecy fits more into this time than really any other time. And it seems to be leading into the next part where they will be delivered up to be afflicted, and people shall hate them because of his name. So I think we're kind of moving into that part of it now. Things are starting to look a little bit more tense, real world, and it compares to the Bible, which is prophetic. So, the next report: Donald Trump is declaring war by naming Jerusalem, Israel's capital, says Palestinian officials. So we've heard from Turkey and we've heard from Iran, we've heard from the Pope. We're now hearing from Palestine, and he's pretty much saying the same thing. He's declaring war against 1.5 billion Muslims and hundreds of millions of Christians. And I think it's worth pointing out that in the Muslim religion, there is a belief that there will be, just similar to the Bible, in the sense that the end times will consist of a war that encompasses the entire globe, something that we've never seen before. And obviously in my lifetime, there's been wars going on, but not in my country, and not a world war. I've read about those in history, and I had hoped that world wars would remain in history, considering how many people died and how stupid it all seemed when I was reading it. And now I find myself in a time where there's a potential for another world war. This one potentially involving nuclear weapons and sonic planes and submarines, all sorts of different weaponry, drones and all sorts of things. The general public is ill prepared for this stuff. We have been watching them prepare this stuff for years and years and years. Drones and robots and, I think they're called ray guns. I think the Russians have it. Some next powerful weapon that shoots things at thousands of miles per hour. I mean, a bullet is fast enough. They made things faster and more deadly. And unfortunately, it seems that we're entering a time where they may use these kind of things. So Donald Trump would effectively be declaring war in the Middle East if he recognizes Jerusalem as Israel's capital, the Palestinians' chief representative to Britain has warned. Manuel Hassani, or Hassassin, forgive me for the names, said it would be the kiss of death to the peace process. If he says what he is intending to say about Jerusalem being the capital of Israel, it means a kiss of death to the two-state solution. I think that's pretty clear. Don't need to read any more than that. The next report has timed out, so I'll reload it. The report after that brings to us a shock warning that a nuclear attack is very close amid World War III. North Korea is very close to being able to attack any target in the US with thermonuclear weapons, according to a shock warning from a former US ambassador to the UN. North Korea will soon be able to blackmail Donald Trump with the ability to strike anywhere in the United States with a nuclear weapon, according to former US ambassador John Bolton. North Korea once again sparked fear of World War III after deciding to ignore international sanctions and continuing its ICBM tests. He told Fox News, "From all that we can see, North Korea is very close to a point where they can deliver thermonuclear weapons to any target they want in the continental United States. Obviously, once they achieve that point, the odds of us doing anything militarily approach zero because the risk of retaliation against us." On Sunday, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said NATO is able to respond to any attack, including ballistic and nuclear attacks. The second day of US military drills took place from South Korea on Tuesday, with 230 aircraft taking part in the operation called Vigilant Ace. The Korean Central News Agency responded, saying the US and South Korea will pay dearly for their provocations. It added the US is begging for nuclear war by staging an extremely dangerous nuclear gamble on the Korean Peninsula. It seems, when I read those kind of replies and reports from North Korea, it seems, I feel like I'm entering into a very familiar zone. And to be honest, it's a bit scary because it feels it's not that it's comfortable, but it feels familiar. So I have less anxiety towards reading that. But the simple fact is, the situation remains dangerous and extremely volatile. And to start looking at these things as normal is where the problem starts to reveal itself. So I guess that's more of a speech to myself to remember that this is all very serious and it's all very real, and that I should still maintain a level of caution when dealing with these subjects. So that's just a speech to myself. So we covered Iran, we covered Turkey, we covered the Pope, and we covered Palestine in regards to their responses, or their preemptive responses in regards to this announcement that Donald Trump just made. This is a further more in-depth report from Turkey. Turkey's Erdogan threatens cutting ties with Israel over Jerusalem issue. So the report reads, if I can get to it, my apologies. Again, President Tayyip Erdogan said on Tuesday, Turkey... oh dear. Technology. I think my computer has a virus. Alright, I may just skip this report if I can't get to it. Okay. So, President Tayyip Erdogan said on Tuesday Turkey could go as far as breaking off diplomatic ties with Israel if the United States formally recognizes Jerusalem as Israel's capital, a move he said would be a red line for Muslims. Erdogan is the latest in a string of regional leaders, including Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas and Jordan's King Hussein, to warn of negative implications of the move. This is basically just reiterating what we already know, basically, that this announcement, although good for the Israelis and kind of destined prophetically, the timing in my eyes, it's not the right time to do this. But at the same time, if it is to fall within a biblical timeline, then I have no control over that. I didn't have any control over it anyway, but I just have even less. I should have no complaints as to this happening, because everything needs to move forward. If you believe in the Bible like I do, then you believe that everything has to move forward in the way that the Bible has said it will move forward. And unfortunately, that means that there's going to be some really difficult and hard times. And we're going to have to see that through. China, preparing to join forces with North Korea in World War III. China has started preparing its military to support North Korea if World War III breaks out with the US. The People's Liberation Army of China has been conducting military exercises on the Korean border in preparation for war breaking out between the US and North Korea. The fear of war between the two countries has risen over the past several months after China's neighbor carried out a number of illegal missile tests and threatened to target the US territory of Guam with a nuclear missile. Following the announcement regarding China's new military drills, military expert Li Ji has given her verdict as to who the country would side with any future conflict. She said the timing of this high-profile announcement of the PLA is a warning to Washington and Seoul not to provoke Pyongyang any further. China's Air Force sent in surveillance aircraft to the Yellow Sea and East China Sea in the last few days, claiming it was there to improve combat readiness and safeguard the country's strategic interests. The aircraft took a flight path not previously flown to regions they had never previously operated in and coordinated with fighter jets, alert aircraft, and guided missile forces, spokesman Shen Jink said. According to a post on the Air Force's official microblog, the move comes as the US prepares to conduct its own military drills in the region with South Korea. The Allies currently have up to 260 aircraft. We were previously told 230. But this report is saying 260 aircraft in a training exercise which simulates how an air war with Kim Jong-un's rogue state would play out. The two countries have been carrying out the war game scenario for decades. Russia and China have urged the cancellation of the US's 5-day program in exchange for North Korea halting its weapons programs. Beijing formally calls the idea the dual suspension proposal. President Trump's military refused to do so and may be partially responsible for why China chose to conduct its own training drills. China has become increasingly frustrated with US President Donald Trump's handling of Kim Jong-un's rogue nation. The US has tabled a resolution in September to the UN Security Council which increased sanctions on the country. However, Trump has since gone further and demanded that Chinese cease all trade with their neighboring country. China has reacted angrily to the demands. The nation's state-run Global Times said, "We can neither persuade Pyongyang nor sway the opinion of Washington." When tensions on the Korean Peninsula reach a new height, a large portion of the pressure is transferred to China. But the US and North Korea must shoulder their own responsibility, which I've read already in this video, without making China the scapegoat. They went on to say the only thing China can do next is firmly uphold its principles, strive to alleviate tensions while at the same time preparing for the worst. It concluded Beijing is fully prepared to use its prowess to defend its national interest. China owes no one anything and other countries must know this. It has long been believed that China has been loyal to North Korea because they feared the destruction of the state would leave them responsible for dealing with any refugee crises that may emerge. So that's the full report. As I said, I apologize. I didn't get the chance to really delve into all of these news reports and pick out the information that I really wanted to highlight. So I've basically just given you everything, which has made this video pretty long. But if you've watched it all, thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. But more importantly, I think everyone should be, if you don't pray, then I think everyone should be saying a little prayer tonight that we make it to the point where we can be received by our Lord, and pray for the other people who aren't ready. Unfortunately, the Bible doesn't say good things will be happening for them or to them. So I think our prayers, as well as being directed at ourselves to make sure that our souls are right with God, I think we should also be praying for the souls that haven't made their lives right with God, so that they may do so before the time completely runs out. That's it. Take care, guys.